go. And we are live. I have some awesome people on the show tonight. I'm looking forward to this show as a true fan, as a Rabbit fan, as a NFC Central diehard. Well, I'm a Dolphins fan too. And when the McCaskies get rid of the team, I'll be 100% Bears fan. But I'm still Bears at heart. I can't not be a Bears fan. But welcome to the Commissioner Evaluation Podcast. I'm John McGlynn, and you could find me on the Twitter machine at John McGlynn75. I'd like to thank my good friend and neighbor Nick Script for letting me use the StreamYard and YouTube to produce these hopefully heated divisional debates. Today I plan to have some more fun in part 6 of 8 of this part series where fan passion and fantasy goodness go head to head. Today we have some really sharp and talented content creators. I'm going to start my introductions here with Dave Kluge at Dave Kluge. Growing up in the south side of Chicago in the West Lawn Park neighborhood, there was a time I couldn't even go to Dominic's without seeing grown women dressed in refrigerettes outfits on Sunday mornings, which, for those who don't know, were the cheerleaders specifically for William the Refrigerator Perry. On the way to church, you'd see grown men cutting their postage stamp-sized front lawn with headbands on for Roselle, like Jim McMahon used to wear to mock the commissioner. Every single kid, including myself, couldn't wait until Sports Friday dress-up day to put on a number 34 Walter Payton jersey underneath their shiny Bear starter jacket, wool tassel cap like I got on right now, and striped scarf, while we were slow motion juking imaginary defenders, trying to get past fast approaching bushes that were they were trying to strip the ball from me on the way to school. Even the family dog had no chance to touch you. Me and the other kids pretended to be sweetness. It's a team that the all-time best defense barely gave up 200 points in an entire season, including 2 playoff shutouts. Now, Dave, I give you a pro's pro the task of going against 3 other great fantasy football fans in this division debate of the NFC North. Are you ready to bear down and defend Soldier Field for all of us, blue and orange-blooded diehard Bears fans?
I will certainly try my best, John. I wasn't even born in 1985 when they won that Super Bowl, so it has been a lifetime of pain and misery for me. My family, since I've been a little kid, we've been season ticket holders, so I've been going to Bears games at Soldier Field my entire life. But man, it's been a pretty bleak one.
Yeah, it seems like it's getting worse now. I don't know what's going on. The GM's coming in and out, and it's kind of business as usual at Hales Hall. It's not a good time to be a Bears fan, that's for sure. But Adam Stark at Everyday Fan FFB, roaring for the up-and-coming Detroit Lions as they try to pounce on the division title. I love the Honolulu Blues for your pod, and it's a great listen. You don't get more Lions fan than that podcast. I was watching the podcast from last week, and I heard you guys discussing how Devin Funchess has a pretty good chance to take over the tight end 1 spot from Hawkinson. That's pretty hot take from you guys.
We'll see about that, but if Funchess makes the team, that'll be nice, just knowing that Brad Holmes made that move. But I've been a Lions fan whole life, sadly. And unlike you, Dave, I wasn't born to see either of our playoff wins. So not just the Super Bowl win, any of the 2 playoff wins, the 1 playoff win the Lions have, 2 playoff appearances. So it's been a rough show for the Detroit Lions fans and myself, but thankfully I'm still young, 24 years old, and looking like we are on the up and up with our new GM Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell. So excited to be on the show. Thanks for having me, and ready to defend my Lions.
Yeah, it's a good. I was at the original Silverdome to see the Bears versus Lions before. I was there for a Tom Petty concert. Some great memories. Lions have had some Hall of Fame caliber players in their roster over the years, and they just can't seem to get over to figure out how to win a playoff series. I mean, they were a powerhouse in the 50s where they had 5 playoff victories. Other than that, they had a 26-7 win over the Giants in 1935. And the year I graduated Brother Rice High School in 1992, they beat the Redskins, who have changed their name 3 times since then. The team has never been to a Super Bowl. They're up and down.
You said Brother Rice High School?
Not the Brother Rice from Michigan, the Brother Rice from Chicago.
Okay, because I'm a Catholic Central guy, and they're big rivals in Michigan, so I was going to say.
We actually went up there, and the school actually went up there and played them a couple years ago. Brother Rice versus Brother Rice. You guys are the Indians or something, right?
Shamrocks. Brother Rice is the Indians, yes.
Yeah, we're the Crusaders in Chicago one. So it was pretty weird that we made that trip back and forth. Happened a couple times, and then I think they just disbanded the series. But yeah, it was nice that they did that. So Kane, this is the only NFC North stadium I have not been to yet. I heard there's great fishing and hunting in Minnesota, but not great football. The Vikings have not made the past the first round of playoffs since 1988 when I was a young 8th grade queen of the year as Cobra. And unlike the Lions, they've had 4 Super Bowl appearances, but no rings to show for it. The Minnesota Miracle was one of the most iconic plays in NFL history. I do thank the Vikings for that. I'm hoping you can gather all of your fantasy football knowledge and make a case for the Vikings to bring home the NFC North Division title this year. I'm allowing you to blow the Jallarhorn for the Vikings or the Gallahorn for the Vikings against these 3 rabid fans on tonight's show. Tell me about yourself. What's going on?
So I think what epitomizes Vikings, right, is my first Vikings memory. You might know it. It was the 1998 NFC Championship game. We had a kicker by the name of Ryan Anderson. Hadn't missed a field goal all year. It happened to be tied. I don't know. Let's just say it was 27-27. Not that I would know the exact score of when he missed the field goal, but it was 27-27. He misses a field goal. And we lose to the Falcons, don't go to the playoffs. Or don't go to the Super Bowl. So that's my first Vikings memory, and it is just, boy, it's been a blast since then.
It's a nice. You guys have a new stadium, right? The other one collapsed. So
yeah, I love the stadium. The stadium's incredible.
It looked great when they did that Minneapolis Miracle, when that place went completely apeshit. Like it looked like it was a great time to be there. Great time. It
truly is an incredible stadium to watch a game. I don't really think there's a bad seat in that entire stadium. Like, it's really, really great. But I just wish we had the good football play to go alongside the good stadium.
Is there at least parking around there? Like, unlike Soldier Field, we have to walk like 17 blocks unless you have a $150 parking pass ticket that you can't even barbecue on.
There is not great parking, so it's very similar there.
If Soldier Field had Comiskey Park type tailgating, it would be the perfect place to have to watch a football game. But what it is. But we'll talk about that now because we got anyway, Pat Fitzmaurice. I used to go to my uncle's cabin up in Ladysmith, Wisconsin. Countless memories I've made from bus trips to Sox Brewers game from Southside Irish bars. My youngest son goes to Wisconsin Whitewater. It's a great time. I mean, everything around there is awesome. The ride up there is nice. Only 2 hours from our house. So I've been to Lambeau 4 times, and I just can't ever figure out how a grown man can sit at a sporting event with a piece of foam cheese on his head. You got a drama queen quarterback, a front office that hates wide receivers, a stadium that's literally across the street from a guy grilling on his front lawn. I mean, it's almost hard to hate the Packers. The fans are some of the nicest people you'll ever meet. The stadium experience is a frozen tundra. It's actually a blast. I really want to hate these guys, but I just can't. It has to be a little annoying rooting for a team that is so close to greatness every year, where everyone knows that adding a complimentary receiver to Devontae Adams would probably put you over the top, but the Packers just put the whole thing in reverse and traded Adams to the Raiders. I mean, what the heck is going on? You got something explaining to do, Pat, but before you do go to bat for these Swiss, Munster, provolone, cheddar, and pepper jack wearing head fans, tell listeners where you can be found, what you do, and what's going on.
They can find me over at Fantasy Pros and, my podcast, Fits on Fantasy, and the Fantasy Pros Dynasty podcast. Thanks for having me, John. And Ladysmith up there, that's like almost in Vikings country. That's right by the Minnesota border. You probably saw some Vikings gear up there, too, I would think.
I was a little kid when we used to go there. We used to go up there and shoot BB guns and kind of forage a little bit. Like, I guess we thought we were actual camper, how do you call it, cabin people. But it was it was a great time. But and then life just gets too busy when you start getting in sports and baseball and football and everything. We kind of lost touch with it. So family has sold it since then. We don't own it anymore. But it was a great time, great memories with my grandpa, my dad, my brothers, and just the kind of guys only stuff to get pretend like we're manly men up in the North Woods.
Nice. So as you know, John, so now I am behind enemy lines, and I'm living here in the Chicago suburbs. And it's funny when the Bears move in a couple of years to Arlington Heights, I'm going to be like 10 minutes away from the stadium. Like that's right up in our neck of the woods. So I'm going to be a lot closer to your hometown team than you will be, John.
That's correct.
And that's going to be a unique experience for sure. But it's been a lot of fun down here because pretty much since the time I moved down here in 1997, the Packers have always kind of had the upper hand. So that's good. Don't want to lose that. But I'm an old timer like you, John. So I do remember a time when the Packers sucked year after year after year. So just as you can remember that glory era of Bears football, like I remember when it wasn't so good. So I've not taken like the good run we've had over the last 3 decades for granted at all.
I don't think I can ever get over to Charles Martin, walking around. I mean, back in the day when Charles Martin would have his white towel would have 9 numbers on there from every bear he planned on, cheap shotting. And then he took Jim McMahon, and it was the worst play probably in NFL history for someone to do, grab him and throw him on his shoulder. And I remember seeing that live and be like, what the, like everybody was just MFing the TV, and it was a terrible play, but it's been bad blood ever since I can remember, and that just made things worse. So I've been there. I've been watching these games for a long time. I celebrated the Bears Super Bowl party at my Uncle Jimmy's house, and in his basement with my whole family. It's been pretty nice to be a Bears fan. It's I just wish the McCaskies would sell the team, and somebody would move to Arlington Heights, take over, turn it into like a Wrigleyville situation where it's hotels and casinos and bars and restaurants. Right, it's terrible to go to a game at Soldier Field now just because of the neighborhood. There's nowhere to park, nowhere to do anything. Everything is crazy expensive. You've got to take a cab anywhere. So I am kind of hoping that a lot of people are like, oh, don't move out of Soldier Field. Soldier Field is terrible. It's terrible to get in and out of. Terrible to park, terrible to do anything with. I can't wait for the move to Soldier Field, and I can't wait for the bus trips from the neighborhood bars to go to Soldier Field. And I'll stop at your house. If I get lost in the bus,
sir.
I'll stay at your house, all right?
You got it.
All right. So, got some news around the NFL. Today, we're lucky to announce that Rob Gronkowski retired today, temporarily until Tom Brady calls him back. I'm sure later in the season, which I think we all kind of see that coming. Yeah, but
he wasn't getting traded to the Lions, was he?
Maybe that's the last time, right? He was getting traded, and he said, "I'm not. You can't trade me. I'm retired." So no, he was not.
Gronk.
He'll probably come back at some point in time, but no surprise to anyone. Jameson Williams is not expected to start the season, and is a strong candidate to be on the pup or the IR. I love Jameson Williams. I love Jameson whiskey. So this is a great pairing for me. I have him in one fantasy football draft so far, one dynasty team anyway. So I can't get him everywhere I want to. He's going around 109. And I'm taking Sky Moore just before him, which I think is. But I have Patrick Mahomes on a lot of my teams, so it's kind of like I'm trying to get that stack. But I think that might be a huge mistake in a couple years because I do love James Williams, but we'll see what happens. Darnell Mooney says the 37-year-old Velus Jones is going to be a playmaker for the team. We'll see what happens there. That's a little camp banter. A lot of NFC North news today anyway. So. Like I said, watch out. T.J. Hockenson, Devin Bunches and Bunches of Funches has made the roster for the Lions. So we'll see what happens there. Well, he's on the camp anyway. And then J.K. Dobbins and my guy, Gus Bus Edwards, they're on schedule to possibly be for the beginning of the season. That's what Harbaugh says anyway. The duel should be ready for training camp or the season. So we'll see what happens with that. That's kind of since last show. That's what's going on. Just a little personal story. My Father's Day weekend is bittersweet. I got to spend a full Sunday with my parents, 2 of my 4 kids, my brother Peter and his 4 kids. My brother Andy was in Florida for a volleyball tournament, and my youngest daughter Katie was a goalie for the True Lacrosse national team. Was in Maryland for a tournament with my wife. I couldn't get off work to go with them, so I couldn't make the trip. But she's got a tournament in Rockford this weekend and New Jersey weekend after that, so I'll be able to see her play a couple more times. But we had the first of my home league, my 7 home league in-person drafts. Scheduling these Mighty McGlynn home league drafts is pretty fun for me. Lots of great content creators from the area that I found on the Twitter and my home leagues. I also get the honor of hosting. Speaking of home leagues, I get the honor of hosting and running the Chicago in-person live Scott Fishbowl drafts on July 2nd at Bourbon Street, which is it literally was a Home Depot sized place that turned into a bar. That's how big Bourbon Street is. In case you guys don't know, it fits like 7,000 people inside the bar. There's literally 4 concerts going on. You don't even know there's something going on. It's huge. So we're trying to get as many drafts as we can there. I'm very excited about that, especially because like 10 of the participants that are going to be there are in my home leagues. That alone should make it pretty fun for me. Pat, you know anyone else that's going to be there on the 2nd?
Yeah, I'm not going to be drafting there, but I'll stop by. Let's see, Andy Behrens, our mutual friend Rob Wozniak. Woz is going to be there, I think. Your guy Nick Scripp, who I'm very much looking forward to meeting in person. Yeah, that's all I can think of now, but I know I'm forgetting a couple of people.
I got the list. There's Steven Johnson, a handful of other guys. There's a lot of good dudes going to be there. It'll be a blast. It'll be a great time. So I'm trying to get more. Right now, I think we're only at 3 drafts. I'm trying to get 5, but we'll see what happens. For a hotbed like Chicago, I don't understand why it's not like a humongous waiting list to start. So, it is what it is. So we'll get there. But so let's start these divisional debates. We'll start with the quarterback position. We'll talk about the starters, and if it helps, any rookies, backups, anything you can do to make your case for your team. So we're going to start with Adam. Tell me about your guys. What's going on on your team here?
Muted.
You're muted.
Classic. Do that on my show every now and then. But so we got Jared Goff as the Lions quarterback. He's not the best in the division, but he's not the worst. And by that I mean Goff playing with, a full strong offensive line. We're getting Ragnow back. Decker's going to be full strength. Penei Sewell's been looking phenomenal, and he had a phenomenal ending stretch. And I honestly think if you just give Jared Goff some time, give him some protection, he's an above average quarterback. He's a solid guy that could give you 8 wins if you surround him with elite talent like TJ Hawkinson, DeAndre Swift, Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Then he honestly does have the potential to maybe not get you to Super Bowl like he did once before, but maybe get you to the playoffs or even a playoff win. There's that 7th spot now, so an extra spot for the playoffs. So if Jared Goff, he just needs to realize that this is kind of his last opportunity to be a starter in the NFL, because if he just botches it this year, Lions are likely going to be cutting him, and he's likely going to be either competing with some other guys for a starting job or a backup. So Goff, I think he really knows what's going on. I think last year the Lions were fully in a rebuild type, like no way we're going to be winning at all. And we kind of saw that going 7 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks out. It was a while without a win. And then we finally got that win against the Vikings, and it sparked the Lions. We got going. Goff started. He finished. He went 3-3 on his last 6 games. I got some stats here. He finished with 1,453 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions against his divisional rivals. So he's got the interceptions down. Touchdowns are and the yards are about So if Jared Goff, if he gets that protection, and I'm not expected Jameson Williams to come in right away and make a big, impact, but the Lions are, 3-3, 6 weeks in, and Jameson Williams is on the pup getting ready to come off. Wouldn't shock me at all if he was ready to go and help this team, make a playoff run or just contend at least.
We'll talk about him later, but right now, Jared Goff is, he's not Mr. Right, but he's Mr. Right now for this Detroit Lions team, and that's it's not a bad place to be. He's a good quarterback. I think he's a little bit underrated in a lot of fantasy people's circles. This team had a great draft. They had, they've got a great building block. Jared Goff, if he could just be in there and do the things he needs to do to not lose games for this team, I think he's a pretty good quarterback. So we'll see what happens there. Well, fantasy football season will tell. It'll all pan out like it always does. But it could be Jared Goff signing an extension at the end of this year, or they could be saying, okay, we got a team in place now. The quarterback didn't make it, and there's a bunch of good quarterbacks come down the pipeline next year. This could be a situation where the Lions could be stacked for a stud quarterback coming in next year, or, like I said, Jared Goff could be the guy for a long term. We'll see. Kane, tell me about the Vikings. You got Kirk Cousins, Kellen Mond, Sean Mannion, Nate Stanley. For the most part, I just had to say Kirk Cousins there. So what do you think about the quarterback situation for the Vikings?
I think it's pretty clear that Kirk Cousins is probably the second best quarterback in the NFC North. I think it's pretty clear that Kirk Cousins is a really, really safe option. And I think what's really, really fun is that if you just cherry pick some stats, because I'm a Vikings fan and that's what I'm going to do here tonight, is I'm just going to cherry pick a few stats, and that's what we're going to go with. If we just look at passer rating in 2021, so Josh Allen in his wins, he had a passer rating of 99.6, and in the losses, Kirk Cousins had a passer rating of 98.9. So really, really close there. Like, even when the Vikings were losing, Kirk Cousins was still efficient and he wasn't making mistakes. I think what's really, really fun, if you look at who has the most games of 300 plus passing yards and 0 interceptions since 2015, Kirk Cousins is third on that list.
Yeah.
Right. He is as safe as a quarterback as you can possibly get. But the fun part is now we might actually have an offense that's productive with good play calling. Hopefully, it can't be worse than the play calling that we've had the past 3 years, right? You can't get worse than 0. So any attempt to move the ball down the field and maybe I don't know, let's have a tight end that can also maybe block and can kind of, keep edges away from Kirk Cousins and allow him to throw the ball down the field. When in 2021, Kirk Cousins was ranked number 1 in passer rating on deep passes, with 8 touchdowns and 1 interception, with a passer rating of 120.6. So, like, Kirk Cousins is incredibly efficient, and as long as he can just have time to make plays, he's going to be really, really good in this team.
Yeah, it's they're not going to catch anybody off guard again with what they did before, and they're kind of a building team too. It's for what he did the last couple of years. I have to commend him. He surpassed whatever anybody thinks what they had. I think projected wise where he's at. So I'm 100% on board with everything you said there. So Dave. There's some situations here with Justin Fields and nothing. There's Darnell Mooney, who's a good wide receiver too. There's a couple. We'll get to all those guys later, but is Justin Fields going to be able to make this step forward for the what he needs to do? Can he carry this whole offense by himself? I mean, we saw him at Ohio State carry a team to beat Trevor Lawrence. It's a situation where he needs to be supernatural almost to win. What's going to happen here?
Yeah, well, John, I want to preface this. I know a lot of Bears fans, really just feel the Bears like deep in their heart. Before I get into this, I want you to know that I'm just a terribly pessimistic Bears fan. So I can't sit here and say that, oh yeah, Bears are going to the Super Bowl, because I just don't believe it. I mean, I'd be shocked if this team can win 5 or 6 games this year. That being said, I do really like Justin Fields, and I think that last year he got the very short end of the stick. He wasn't supposed to start until about halfway through the year. Some people were saying that he'd benefit from sitting an entire year on the bench, and then Andy Dalton gets hurt in week 2. He gets thrusted out on the field, and wouldn't you know it, he wasn't even close to being ready. He looked terrible off the bat, but as the season progressed, he started looking a little bit better. He got a little bit more comfortable running the ball, and that's really where his biggest strength was. But if you look last year, and just like Kane did earlier, I'm going to cherry pick the heck out of these stats to paint a pretty picture here. Justin Fields played in 65% of the team's offensive snaps in 10 games last year. In the first 6 games, he had a sub 60% completion percentage. 0.3 touchdowns per game, averaging a full interception per game, just 134 passing yards and 30 rushing yards. In those last 4 games, though, 62.5% completion, 1.25 touchdowns per game, 244 passing yards, and 64 rushing yards. Now, I don't want to extrapolate that and talk about fantasy and all that, because, that would make him a pretty elite fantasy weapon. But I think that's what we're going to see, at least from a fantasy standpoint, is a guy that's going to rack up some monster numbers here. We see this often on, not great football teams where quarterbacks just rack up points in garbage time. We saw it with Deshaun Watson and Dak Prescott in 2020. We see this almost every single year. So I like Fields. I think that he's got a lot of promise from a fantasy standpoint, but I'm not expecting more than 5 or 6 wins out of Chicago this year.
No, same boat. And the other thing too about him, he's such a great athlete. He's such an awesome, like everybody. I've seen you talk about that play before a while ago on Twitter, where it looked like it was supposed to be post and slants to the right, and he rolled out like it was supposed to be hitting somebody on a little dig route, and everything kind of broke down, and he got around the linebackers, defensive ends, defensive people, defensive tackles, defensive ends, linebackers that were kind of blitzing on that play. He got around everybody, and he is not shifty like Lamar Jackson, but he's built like an alligator. He's like 100% muscle. You can't bring that guy down without attacking him. And he can make those plays happen all the time because he's fast, he's strong, he's big, he's such a great athlete, and he is an accurate quarterback. And it's terrible that the Bears aren't giving him anything to work with now, because I just wish that he could be what he could be, and they're just not letting him. And I just feel bad that guys come in the NFL with waiting their whole life to get to this situation, and then getting shit on by having a surrounding cast of nothing. So it's going to be. I just hope that he lives out the Bears rebuilding. I know they got tons of money and tons of picks, and all the rest of the stuff going on the next couple of years. But money talks and BS walks, and if you're only winning 4 or 5 games 2 years in a row, they're going to move on to another quarterback in a couple of years, and that's just kind of how it works, unfortunately. So
I think the Bears are kind of set up next year to put them in a much better situation as well. They're going to have premium draft capital in a draft class with Jackson Smith-Njigba and Booty coming out of there, and they're also looking at about $130 million in salary cap. So they didn't do much this year with this year was all about shedding veteran contracts and trying to see what they've got on the roster. But I think next year is when we're going to see some pretty splashy moves by this new staff to put some talent around Justin Fields and help him succeed.
Agreed. I just hope it's not like Jacksonville Jaguars moves where they just spend money to spend money. I hope they actually do things, re-sign important players, young people, make things happen. Like when they had this pick this year, why would you pick a 25-year-old Dallas Jones when you know you're in rebuilding now? I don't get that. Why wouldn't you pick some 19-year-old punt returner that's, I mean, J.J. Reason said he's the worst. He's past the top 200 receivers. I mean, why would you make that move? I don't understand that kind of stuff. The Bears are notoriously terrible first-round drafters. They do stuff in drafting later on in the draft. They're okay, but I get it. I just hope they don't mess us up because they're doing things right now to rebuild. I wish they wouldn't have took a quarterback right now, but they're doing things right by getting rid of all the money and getting rid of all the talent that you don't need right now. And when they rebuild, it's going to be great. We're all crossing our fingers and are optimistic like yourself. So, Pat, this is a tough one for you here. You gotta defend.
Yeah, this is quite the competition for best quarterback in the division. I don't know how I'm going to make a case for my guy. It's going to be tricky. So far, the three guys who made their cases, I guess I got to give it to Kane for Kirk Cousins. I mean, I will say that if you need a big 3rd and 8, no one will more reliably complete a 6-yard pass than Kirk Cousins. My guy, Rodgers, well, let's see. They're the 4 MVPs. There's the career passer rating for Aaron Rodgers is 104.5. Tom Brady's is 97.6. Rodgers' career yards per attempt is 7.8. Brady's is 7.5. And here are some interesting numbers. Records against division foes. Rodgers versus the Bears, 22-5. Rodgers against the Lions, 18-6. Rodgers against the Vikings, 16-10-1. The tie was when we had the game-clinching interception called back because Clay Matthews hit Kirk Cousins too hard and got a personal foul penalty. And actually, my buddy Dave Kluge fed me this one. For people worried about how Rodgers is going to be able to function without Davante Adams, he has averaged over his career 23 points a game with Adams in the lineup, 27 points a game in the 7 games Adams has missed, and the Packers are 7-0 in those games Adams has missed. So I think he's still going to be okay. I think he's still going to be pretty good. I do think he's probably the best quarterback in this division.
I know it was tough to get all that stuff out. It was tough. My ears hurt from listening to all that, but it's all right. You had to say it. It's the truth. Stats lie. It is what it is. But it's got to be nice to live. Root for a franchise that's had like 3 quarterbacks in the last 70 years. It must be nice.
Yeah, and Don Mikowski was pretty good in his own right. So it's been a good run.
The Magic Man, yes, absolutely. I remember him too. Everybody that wears a G on their helmet, it just has inflicted some kind of pain to every Bears fan for since I've been alive for some reason.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about the backup quarterback situation though, John. That draft night, the Jordan Love pick was not one of the better moments I've had as a Packers fan. So we just won't talk about that.
Yeah, no, it is what it is. That's I think they were covering their own butts in that situation just in case Rodgers had a meltdown or decided to do some kind of Aaron Rodgers thing. But it is what it is.
Why would we have wanted someone like T. Higgins? I mean, he wouldn't have helped us.
Personally, that was my favorite Packers pick. That was number 1 for me because that one actually didn't hurt me. Like it actively didn't hurt my team. Every other pick feels like it hurt me.
Thanks, Kane. That was perfect. Nice. That was exactly what we all wanted to say. Yeah.
See, I love how you guys are like Jordan Love. Oh man, that's what a bad pick. And I'm over here thinking like Laken Tomlinson, Brandon Pettigrew. There's just so many Lions first round busts where I'm like, man, it would be kind of nice to have Jordan Love be that bust,
Don't get us started on Bears first round picks, please. It's bad. But let's talk about running backs. The Bears have had Walter Payton. They've had some great, tons of great running backs since I've been a kid. Dave, tell me about the entire backfield of the Bears right now. The situation going on in Chicago. what are they looking forward to going in the future with the running backs? I love Khalil Herbert. I love Montgomery, but Khalil Herbert I think is something special too. If something ever happens to Montgomery, I think he can take the load. Treston Ebner is a guy that everybody's kind of you're looking forward to seeing if something else ever happens. Darrington Evans, I don't know what the story is there, but tell me about Montgomery, Herbert, and their newest addition, Treston Ebner.
Yeah, I mean, Herbert's a guy that really, really looked great last year. The Bears have kind of had this penchant for just hitting on late round running backs. Even Jeremy Langford, he had a big year there. Jordan Howard had a couple big years there. And now Khalil Herbert is stepping in as that next guy. Even David Montgomery came in as the third round. But really, I'm expecting much more of a split backfield this year than I think people are expecting. You see David Montgomery is still getting drafted as an RB2. And with him on a contract year, it seems like the team is going to give a little bit more leash to Herbert to see what they've got in him, see how they need to address that position. All sounds coming out of Chicago make it sound like they have no intention of extending David Montgomery or keeping him beyond his rookie deal. So that means more likely than not, either Khalil Herbert is going to be the guy next year, or they're going to have to draft or sign somebody else at the position. So I'd expect Herbert to get some touches this year. I'm kind of looking at him fantasy-wise as a budget A.J. Dillon, where I think he's going to have some standalone weekly value and then immense upside if something were to happen to David Montgomery. And David Montgomery, he's been the engine that has kept this offense running for the last few years. And he does everything well, but he doesn't do anything spectacularly. So really, I don't think that he's somebody that you can lean on as a feature back. I see him as a very solid running back, but not somebody that's going to deserve the $40 or $50 million that he's probably going to be asking for after the season.
No, it's terrible. The NFL is a terrible place for running backs. After they get chewed up and spit out, unfortunately. And Montgomery, like you said, he has been good, just not great. And it's going to suck to see him go somewhere else and be a kind of a timeshare, middle of the road running back the rest of his career. But I wanted to hear what you had to say about Khalil Herbert, because I like him a lot. But I think he's going to be some people say he's better than Montgomery, and I don't doubt that, but I think that Khalil Herbert is probably going to get a chance the following year when they have to do so much drafting of other positions on this team with their draft picks and with free agency. They might give Herbert a shot to see what he's got for a year before they pick a running back in 2024, or 2023. But we'll see what happens. So let's go to Pat. Tell me about Dave had kind of mentioned before about the Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon stack. That's a great place to be for a running back position. Tell me about the Packers running backs.
Yeah, I mean, John, I think they're going to be essential to the offense this year because with no Davante Adams, I think it's safe to say the Packers are going to run the ball at a higher rate than they did last year, and Rodgers is probably going to target his running backs at a much higher rate than he did last year. And the Packers are probably going to be in a lot of run-friendly game scripts. I mean, their defense is looking pretty good on paper. They've got a fairly friendly schedule. So I think they're going to have some opportunities to, really pile up stats like both of these guys, Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. I wouldn't be surprised if the Packers backfield led the NFL in fantasy points. And, Jones is probably the second best Packers running back of my lifetime, with apologies to, Dorsey Levens and Eddie Lacy, but it's Ahman Green and Aaron Jones, I think. He's had 53 touchdowns in 69 career games. He's averaged 93.5 yards from scrimmage over the last 3 years per game. And we have seen his target shares and usage in the passing game spike whenever Davante Adams has been out. So, I don't think a 70, 80 catch season is out of the question for Jones this year. As far as running the ball, I think we saw a little bit of a shift late last year towards A.J. Dillon as maybe the slightly more primary ball carrier. In the last 8 games, Dillon and Aaron Jones played together during the regular season. Dillon averaged 13.7 carries. Jones averaged 10.2 carries. I think we might see that same sort of split this year, with Jones the much more involved pass catcher. Although Dillon, man, for a big dude, he was actually better as a pass catcher than advertised last year. Didn't really do much of that at Boston College, but I think he had caught like something like 32 out of 35 targets last year, made some catches outside the frame of his body. Like for a dude that big, I mean, just looks like a warhorse. And, like he's surprisingly quick and nimble sometimes. So he was also kind of more their goal line back late last year. So I think it's a pretty good 1-2 punch. They had a guy last year, a late round pick from Kentucky named Kylan Hill, who was really good in the preseason and then tore his ACL bringing a kickoff out from like 9 yards deep in his end zone, which pretty much typifies the special teams BS we saw from the Packers last year that probably cost them a Super Bowl appearance. I mean, they had like everything else clicking and the special teams were just a complete shit show. So, I don't know if Kylan Hill is going to be back in time. He might get popped. And there's really not much else. I'm trying to think of the other guy, Goodson, like a UDFA.
Yeah, Tyler Goodson is he's the rookie that just drafted Kylan Hill, which unfortunately you said Kylan Hill. He was my last cut this morning when I had to get my roster down. I love Kylan Hill. It really sucked kind of get rid of him, and I saw his potential last year. I was super happy drafting him late. Patrick Taylor, BJ Taylor, they got him late too, or UDFA, I don't remember, but Tyler Goodson is a good pick, but Kylan Hill really hurt the cut for my team. I had so much expectations from him, and like you said about A.J. Dillon, it might be, I'm not going to say it's going to be a flawless transition if something was to happen to Aaron Jones, but A.J. Dillon, I talk about a complimentary back to have in your backfield if something happened to your starter. Aaron Jones is going to be what they have as receivers. Aaron Rodgers is going to lean on Aaron Jones until the offense gets going. Everybody knows that, but if A.J. Dillon gets the goal line back work, the receiving work, and all the rest of the carries, or something happens to Aaron Jones, he will be a fantasy superstar.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, both of these guys have definite standalone fantasy value, and the bonus is if one of them were to get hurt, the other guy is just going to be a top
Gold.
3 running back for that next week,
as they call it, fantasy gold.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so it's scary what they got back there. Kane, tell me about it's pretty easy to talk about your backfield here in Minnesota, but tell us all about it, why it's going to be better than everybody else.
I'm going to ignore any chance of Dalvin getting injured while I talk about this. Dalvin Cook, I think realistically, especially when we're talking about fantasy football, is one of the best running backs for this next season, right? He is absolutely incredible, and I think he is what was the crazy stat I saw? I think he's third in efficiency in screens, right? So he's just great in the passing game too. He can catch a lot of passes. The offensive line, it's hard to be worse than what the Vikings have been. So you have to think it's either the same or it's going to get a little better. Dalvin Cook is the best running back in this division, provided he stays healthy for a full 17 games. I keep forgetting we're in 17 games. I don't think I'll ever be over to 17 games. I think I'm gonna be stuck at 16 for a few more years. But right. I think there's, right. I think, even past Dalvin Cook, I think if he ends up getting injured, right, Alexander Mattison, I think, is a really, really solid player. He's shown that when, Dalvin Cook has been out, that he's been a serviceable player, especially for fantasy football. I think Kene Nwangwu is really interesting, super fast player out of Iowa State, just an absolute burner. So I think he's pretty interesting too. If something happens to Dalvin Cook, or there's even a chance, over the next few years that Nwangwu continues to stay and Madison might not get re-signed. So you could be looking at Kenny for a little bit longer. There was the recent draft pick of Ty Chandler. I think he was a 7th round pick for the Vikings. He was super productive in college football. We even saw that last year at UNC. So just a really, really good player. I think, he was even good at Tennessee as well. So I think, all in all, the Vikings have some really, really solid players behind Dalvin Cook. And in the situation where Dalvin Cook does go down, you lose a bit when you're looking for that workhorse kind of running back for fantasy football and just for the NFL in general. But I think that gets spread out over the next 3 running backs pretty easily. Added together, they can hopefully get close to what Dalvin Cook can do. But by themselves, I think they're a long ways away from what Dalvin Cook is and how special of a player he is, especially for the Vikings.
This is Madison's contract year too, so I'm not, he may be moving on. I have Kenny Nwangu on every one of my fantasy teams. I'm waiting for him, to grab the torch when Madison's gone. But I'm sure it's not going to happen. But I love that guy. He is a special talent. Ty Chandler and rookie Brian Koback, like they made some decent depth moves this year in the draft. So they have a pretty stacked as a group. If something happened to Dalvin Cook, I think they have the sustainability to keep the offense going with the talent they have behind Dalvin Cook. So it's a lot of good moves by the Vikings themselves. So it's you got to be pretty happy with that situation, with them. So
if we had Dalvin to a lower contract, I'd be ecstatic with what we have.
Right. No, I would be ecstatic too. It is for fantasy, it's not great, but for a team like NFL wise, that is a fantastic group of stacked depth on that team. It's what you'd want on an NFL team. It's perfect. So, tell me about the Lions. We got some Lions stuff going on here.
Your
turn. You can talk about Swift and Williams and Jamar Jefferson.
Yeah, it'll be a little bit easier to defend than Jared Goff going up against Rodgers and Cousins and Fields. But yeah, DeAndre Swift, I'm firmly believer that he is by far the second best running back in this division. Still think Dalvin Cook holds the torch, but for what I saw last year, DeAndre Swift looked phenomenal. He showed every aspect of the game, and he was perfect at it. He was running dudes over. He was jumping over guys. He was making cuts, making guys fall. It was just immaculate what he was doing. So now, time for some stats. And like you guys did, I got my own cherry-picked stats. So DeAndre Swift led the league with 4.1 yards created per touch. So there's that. DeAndre Swift, he only started in 13 games or only appeared in 13 games. He was 5th in receiving yards, and he was also 5th in fantasy points per touch for you fantasy players out there. If you take away the 3 games that DeAndre Swift was limited in last season, he averaged 18.5 PPR points per game through week 11. That was more than Joe Mixon, Leonard Fournette, Najee Harris, Alvin Kamara, and as of now, per Dave Burgett and another Lions beat reporter, we should expect DeAndre Swift to see 20 touches per game, which is a solid amount. We saw what happened last year when Swift went down, and it wasn't just DeAndre Swift producing. It was this whole Lions offensive line, the offensive coordinator. It was everyone. We had Craig Reynolds come in and rush for 100 yards, something that has only been done once, and it was by Kerryon Johnson since like 10, 12 years. It's been a while, but the Lions have had no more than like 2 or 3 100-yard rushers in the last 10-ish years, and one of them is Craig Reynolds. So if that can happen, you got a decent offensive line. So DeAndre Swift, I think he is in line for a monster year. I think if you're, a guy that you're trying to risk it all on a player that's going to give you massive upside, if Swift stays healthy for 15, 16 games, then he is a lock for a top 5 running back. So DeAndre Swift, he's looking bigger as well. I don't know if you guys saw that picture going around. He's bulked up just like Najee Harris did, but he's got them big guns like his dad does. So DeAndre Swift, I'm high on him. And if he goes down, we got Jamal Williams, Mr. Funny Guy. You guys, Pat, you know who I'm talking about. But the rest of you listeners, you're going to see him on Hard Knocks, and this dude is going to win your hearts, win the show. He's going to be the funniest guy on there. Anytime he's talking to the media, talking to anyone, he just brings out a smile, makes you laugh. He's just a great dude. So I'm excited for Hard Knocks. I'm excited for this running back backfield.
Lombardi Lenny comes in heavy, and everybody says, "Oh, Lasagna Lenny or Pierogi," all the names I got for him. Swift comes in, gains some weight, but it's muscle. I mean, the guy, you can see he's really worked his butt off in the offseason to get. It's not fat like but it's he is Nick Scripps' favorite running back. I'm sus, as kids say nowadays, sus about him. That's kind of the new word, I guess. But I think he's going to be good, but just not as good as advertised. I hope he does well. He's on a couple of my fantasy teams, but as far as the entire situation with the team, he's got plenty of opportunities, but I don't think he's as good as advertised. That's just what I'm saying. That's just me, though. But
typical Bears fan.
He's better than Montgomery. I'll give you that much. Of course, that's the situation. But I just think that people expect him to be like the fantasy RB1, and I'm just not seeing. There's a lot of other stuff in the team that'll stop that from happening. So, but we'll talk about wide receivers now. Who's got the best wide receivers on this? Inside and outside receivers. We'll talk about tight ends in a minute, but for right now, Kane, tell me about the wide receivers on this Minnesota Vikings team. It's going to be a pretty nice conversation for you to have.
Yeah, again, this is a position that I think the Vikings are the best at in this division. I think when you have a guy like Justin Jefferson, who not only can pair his ability to just get a ton of targets, pairs that with efficiency, I think then you're talking about a really, really good player. And you can't forget hometown hero, right? You can't forget Adam Thielen. He means a whole lot more to this team than probably anyone outside of Minnesota really knows, right? Yeah, he from DL, so he's from Detroit Lakes, went to school at a D2 college, University of Minnesota Mankato, and then was a UDFA by the Vikings. He's just a great dude. I think if you were a baseball guy, he kind of has that same effect on kind of young kids that are playing football that Joe Mauer did, right? Joe Mauer was a Minnesota kid playing catcher. Everyone wanted to play catcher after Joe Mauer was playing in the MLB, right? And it's really similar. Adam Thielen is loved by every single kid in Minnesota. I think overall, you just have to be happy with what the Vikings are doing. If it's the question of who's the third wide receiver, it's probably going to be KJ Osborne. He made some flashes last year, but for fantasy football, we don't have to keep worrying about three wide receivers unless Adam Thielen gets hurt, which hopefully that doesn't happen again. But past that, there's a lot of guys that could be interesting. Emir Smith-Marset out of Iowa, Olabisi Johnson, Jalen Naylor. There's some guys that are really, really interesting and could be some nice role spots. But overall, the wide receiver is really, really strong for the Vikings.
You mentioned the wide receiver 3 when you said Emir Smith-Marset. That's my guy. I'm hoping that he wins his job. I think he's got a little edge right now as it goes. Osborne's a great third option too, but I really want to see Emir Smith-Marset get the opportunity there. I think he's a great athlete. Great, he could be a really good receiver, but that's who I'm pulling for in this depth chart right now on your team.
Kane, you also mentioned that you're not really worried about the wide receiver 3. I just want to point out Kevin O'Connell coming over from the Rams. They ran more 3 wide receiver sets than almost any team in the NFL last year. So there might be an opportunity for KJ Osborne here. Like you said, he flashed last year. He's somebody that I'm kind of trepidatious. I'm not getting too excited about, but as a late round pick, I'm really liking some KJ Osborne.
Well, I just mean in the grand scheme of fantasy football, right? How often do you see 3 guys that are consistently good for fantasy football in the same offense at the same position? It doesn't really happen. So I think that's more my trepidation. I think for the Vikings, having KJ Osborne as that third weapon, his ability to be really, really fast, right, and he can stretch the field vertically, I think that's the difference with Emir Smith-Marset. He has a lot more horizontal speed, right, and he's a lot more agile, I think, than KJ Osborne. I like Emir Smith-Marset a lot, other than the fact that I'm a Gopher alum and he went to Iowa. But other than that, right?
The truth comes out.
Oh yeah, I have season tickets to the Gophers. Yeah, I'm firmly planted in that camp. I'm aware of it. But I just think KJ Osborne just adds something to that offense that Emir Smith doesn't. And granted, Olabisi Johnson and Jalen Naylor were kind of working a little bit. I don't think you need to be worried about any wide receiver past that.
Yeah, no, I get it. So, Adam, tell me about these awesome Lions receivers you got going on here in Detroit.
Well, we made a little splash, not just in free agency, but in the draft as well. In free agency, we went out and got stud wide receiver DJ Shark, however you pronounce it, but wide receiver from the Jaguars. Who
you got to sing that. You got to sing DJ Shark.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got to sing the whole song. Now it's gonna be stuck in my head for the rest of the night. Jeez. But yeah, so he was a guy who showed some flashes and potentials in Jacksonville, but ultimately he kept on getting injured, so he couldn't, show his full potential. He seems like to be a kind of Marvin Jones-esque guy, where you're gonna have Amon-Ra be your slant, route running underneath guy, and then Jameson Williams, when he gets healthy, he's gonna be stretching the field, that deep threat. So the Lions, as of right now, last year, it was a lot better than expected. We got Amon-Ra St. Brown in the 4th round, and it seemed like a steal at the time. And all the Lions fans were happy, and we didn't realize what we had until the last 4 weeks. And the last 4 weeks were pretty special. 10 receptions, 86 yards, 1 touchdown. 8 receptions, 73 yards. 8 receptions, 90 yards, 1 touchdown. 9 receptions, 91 yards, 1 touchdown. And he also caught the game-winning touchdown from Goff to get the Lions their first win over the Vikings. Unfortunately, I can't do much bragging there, so I will just leave it at that. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, he has truly turned it up and was honestly probably the best or one of the best value picks in the draft last year. He truly outperformed his ADP in the NFL draft and fantasy drafts. He was a true baller. And for me, I'm thinking that Jameson Williams helps out Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think once he's healthy and once those two get going, I think they're going to have that chemistry of, hey, they slept on us. And I know it's kind of silly to say that the Lions were sleeping on Jameson Williams, but he felt disrespected being that, I think, 4th wide receiver off the board, maybe 3rd. But nonetheless, he was not the first, and that's what he wanted. So he felt disrespected. Even though he still went early in the 1st round, he still feels the same as Amon-Ra going in the 4th round. So there are going to be guys that have that dog mentality in them, and I think we're going to see some swagger with Jameson Williams, and I don't know where I'm at with him. I either think he's going to be, a cool cat on Hard Knocks, or I don't think he's going to say one single word. So if we get either or, I'll be happy with it. But I'm just excited to see him fully healthy. Unfortunately, I'm a believer that he's going to be put on the PUP list. I think he's going to be taken really slow. The Lions know that we got a lot of chips on him. We made the trade for him. If we were to rush him out, even on time, and he, re-injures that knee, gets another injury, it's a whole chaos, another story situation for Dan Campbell. So I think Lions are really going to take their time, unless Jared Goff is grooving and like a 4-2, 5-1, maybe 6-2, something like that. But you never know. So other than that, I'm expecting Jameson Williams to be out quite some time this year.
I'm expecting the same thing, PUP list stuff. And you mentioned before, sleeper. I think Josh Reynolds is one of the biggest sleepers in this division this year. I think he's going to have a big year while he's filling in for Jameson Williams. That's just kind of a situation I think is going to happen. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I'm a Wisconsin guy, Adam. No love for my dude Quintez Cephas. I mean,
he's just been injured, man. He had that awesome. He makes phenomenal training camp catches. I've seen dozens of just pinpoint ball catches where he just looks phenomenal, and then he comes out, plays 1-2 good games, and then gets injured. So we'll see what he can do, but I'm expecting him to be one of the 6.
Yeah, he's they've just added too much, I think, for him to have room to pop.
Yeah, Ross. Yeah, you named them all. This is when Jameson Williams does become healthy later in the season, and he might not be what advertised this year, but I think going forward they made a great pick by bringing Jameson Williams on this roster. So I'm super happy about that. So Dave, we got to talk about the Bears receivers.
I mean, there's really not too much to talk about. Darnell Mooney really surprised everybody last year stepping up, but I think a lot of that had to do more with what happened in the offseason than Darnell Mooney's talent specifically. If you remember, Matt Nagy didn't give Justin Field any reps with the first team, so it was obvious when he stepped out on the field that he had absolutely no sort of chemistry with Allen Robinson or Cole Kmet, and the one guy that he did have chemistry with was Darnell Mooney, and he hyper-targeted him for the rest of the season. And it seems like they've been working on that connection even more this offseason. So again, just because when you look at the depth chart, there isn't anybody else that I really expect to step up. Darnell Mooney is probably going to lead this team in targets yet again, but I don't expect that to be a long-term option. This team is almost assured to go out next season and address the wide receiver position pretty heavily. I really wanted them to go after George Pickens or Christian Watson, some of the guys that were available this year with that second-round pick. Unfortunately, they completely overlooked that for a couple guys on defense. So they are fully committed to the rebuild, just taking best player available. And Darnell Mooney, from fantasy purposes, he could surprise again this year. I mean, somebody's got to catch passes. He might see 160 targets again, but he's not somebody that I'm overly excited about.
No, the Bears went for depth on offensive line instead of skill positions, and I don't blame them for that. It is what it is. You have to. I'm happy the Bears are doing that kind of thing. Protecting Justin Fields is their number one priority right now, and then building, setting a foundation for this team, and then going forward. So it is what it is. There's not much to talk about here, but there will be plenty to talk about in the years, coming, because they got, like you said, money, picks, whole deal. They're in a great position. So, yeah, we'll see. In a couple years from now, you may be he who laughs loudest kind of thing. You never know what the Bears are going to bring to this team. So, Pat, tell me about these Packers receivers. You get Christian Watson brought in, Alan Lazard, Romeo Doubs, Amari Rogers, who I love. I wish he'd pan out this year. Sammy Watkins, everybody's favorite 1st through 4 week hero. Tell me about the rest of this team.
Well, John, let's start with Devontae Adams. Oh, shit, we traded him. I got nothing. No, so, yeah, we've got Alan Lazard, who, I mean, to this point, I think, like, his greatest attribute has probably been his blocking. And I know Dave is kind of intrigued by him for this year. What worries me, I think it's going to be such an unpredictable cocktail as far as, like, how the targets are divvied up with this team. Maybe there's a chance that Lazard gets 110 targets and 75 catches for 900 yards, 7 or 8 touchdowns, like has a decent fantasy relevant season. But like, I think that's the top end of it. And that assumes that maybe, that's if like Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs and Samori Toure, their other rookie in the 7th round, are all like just rookies and aren't ready to contribute right away. Who knows with Watson? I mean, the guy's such a physical freak, just so big and fast. I mean, it would be great if he hit the ground running, but coming from a D2, sorry, I know D2 isn't politically correct anymore, but coming from a smaller school, what are the odds that he's ready for primetime right away? And Rodgers is kind of notoriously demanding of his receivers, like, if you're supposed to run an 8-yard out, you better be making that cut at 8 yards and not 7.5 or 9, So we'll see how that goes. He's still got his guy Randall Cobb, but he's been on the decline for some time now. The injuries have piled up. Amari Rogers, hasn't been really encouraging with him yet. Would it surprise you guys if Sammy Watkins had like a 5 for 83 in a touchdown game in week 1, and all of a sudden people are bidding like $8 or $9 on fab money? Wouldn't shock me at all if like Watkins wound up the wide receiver 1 somehow. And
every year, man.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's been a tease for his whole career. Maybe he finally puts it all together. Stranger things have happened, I guess. But yeah, it's a pretty bleak situation. I still don't think we can rule out the possibility that they bring in Julio Jones or Will Fuller. Someone, T.Y. Hilton. I don't know who else is unsigned. Cole Beasley. I don't think they're going to do another slot guy, but... So, yeah, I mean, this is an interesting situation for sure, and, not one of the better wide receiver rooms in the NFL.
No, I have Amari Rogers. I see these reports coming out of camps that he's caught 2 touchdowns the other day. He's making all the right moves. Rogers to Rogers will be a thing this year. I mean, what do you see about Amari Rogers? Because I love him. I like him a lot anyway. He's on a bunch of my teams. I drafted him with great anticipation. Do you see anything? Do you think that from what you've heard out of Packers camp so far this year, is he doing anything at all, or is he just kind of what's going? Is he what we saw last year or so? Just not much going on.
So I had not seen anything about him in the OTAs this year. So maybe I missed reports that he looked good. I know just it hasn't looked that great to this point, but like I like that big slot prototype. Maybe he could be that guy. And I know my guy, Alex Dunlap of Roster Watch, was like really kind of excited by Amari Rogers in the Senior Bowl, in Senior Bowl week. I remember he thought Amari looked really good and, might do something. He's kind of, you look at him, he's almost built like kind of a running back. So maybe like he can be that guy who's like a short area receiver and can do some damage after the catch. But we'll see, man. I mean, that's the thing. Like Cobb is Aaron Rodgers' guy. So, like, Amari Rogers has to beat out Cobb or Cobb has to get hurt or something. So I don't know if, like, Rodgers can beat him out on the merits to be that prime slot guy. We'll see. I'd love to see him make a big step up because that would be, really important to, us not having a clearly below average wide receiver core.
Yeah, a good slot that steps up for this team would be a humongous addition to the receiving core that really kind of needs a boost. So, yeah, I agree with you on that one. That's great. So let's talk some tight ends here. Uh, we got some pretty decent tight ends in this division. They're not the best in the world, but pretty good. Pat, let's go back to you right from the get go and just talk about tight ends. I saw a report today saying he might start the season on a pup list or the IR, depending on from what he's doing. You got Josiah DeGura, and then Mercedes Lewis. I'm not sure if he's still in the camp right now, but what do you think about DeGura? Because he's next in line if something goes on with Tunyon.
Yeah, interesting. I think he could be more relevant because of the lack of wide receiver talent. And, even though that was another of the first 2-day picks I was not happy with in that draft, I'm like, what are they doing taking an H back in the third round? But he has actually looked pretty good when he's played. He's like pretty athletic. So, more athletic than Tunyon. I will say this, and I, challenge my peers here to come up with one of their tight ends who's had an 11 touchdown season. Anyone? No, I don't think so. So, I'm not going to make the claim, though, that Big Bob Tunyon is the best tight end in this group. But, man, I mean, I was fading the hell out of him in fantasy last year because that 11 TD season was so fluky. But I'm kind of back on the Tunyon bandwagon this year for fantasy because of the wide receiver situation, and like Aaron Rodgers trusts him. So it wouldn't surprise me if he had 600 yards and maybe 8 touchdowns. Like it just wouldn't shock me. Like I think he could be a lower end tight end one, but like not a guy I want to take in the single digit rounds of drafts either in redraft. So yeah, I mean I think I dealt him away in a dynasty league was it before last year for like Kenyon Drake or something? I'm kind of regretting that now.
Yeah, he's not flashy, but he, like to get those touchdowns from a guy, I mean, that's all you need is everybody knows on a weekly basis, tight end 6 through tight end 29,000 is touchdown dependent. And that's just kind of, if you get a guy who's scoring 11 touchdowns in the season, you got to keep a guy like that, even though he's not flashy, or trade him away for something that it ends up being better. But in a tight end premium, he only catches like three passes a game, nothing crazy, but he is an efficient player for being open in the middle of the field around the red zone. So it is what it is. Kane, we have we know what you guys have on tight end. Irv Smith, everybody drools over Irv Smith. It's Johnny Munt, Ben Effelson, nothing behind him. So Irv Smith is the guy in Minnesota. What do you think? What's your notion about Irv Smith this year?
Well, I'll tell Pat that I don't have a guy that can catch 11 touchdowns in a season. But what one of my backups can do, he can also punt. So if you have the tight end that can also punt on your team, then give me a call. But we have Zach Davidson, who is also the punter for Central Missouri. So we can fire that one up in a pinch if need be. No, but Irv Smith, I think, is really interesting. We know that he is crazy athletic, and we just hope he can be on the field. He can line out. He can line out wide if he needs to. He definitely has that skill set. So I think it's just really, really interesting to see how Irv Smith is going to fit into this offense, and if he kind of ends up being maybe that third wide receiver almost, and we have another guy like Johnny Munter or Ben Ellison that kind of plays the inline tight end. I'm not really sure what's going to happen, but I think there's going to be a mix of that, and I think Irv Smith is going to be on the field a lot. I think, coming over from the Rams, Kevin O'Connell is going to do a lot of 3-by-1, right? A lot of 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end set. So I think you have to be aware that Irv Smith is probably going to be on the field quite a bit. And if we are all trying to say that there's going to be an uptick, not only in, just passing attempts, but also probably an uptick in output, then you have to assume that Irv Smith is going to have some correlation of that, right? He's going to have some share of that. I don't know how big that's going to be because I don't know how much, this coaching staff is going to trust Irv Smith because he's been a little bit behind on the development just due to injury. But I think Irv Smith really, really good. We saw that in the national championship game, right, when he was with Alabama, that he is very, very athletic. He's a very, very good player. So we'll just see how that kind of all shakes out.
had to take myself off mute there. Yeah, that's. I look forward. Irv Smith is somebody I wanted to get, but people are asking just way too much to trying to trade for him now. He's almost an iconic player in fantasy for what what people think tight end is going to bring to the table. He's so for me. He's in the middle of the pack. I'm not going to chase him, but if somebody offers it to me, I'll take him. But it's a nice setup. So,
like in Dynasty, I'd rather have Robert Tonyan plus than Irv Smith.
Ooh, that's tough.
So,
Dave, one of the best tight ends in the league. You got my guy. You got Cole Kmet and James O'Shaughnessy after that. Not much going on the depth chart, but Cole Kmet is someone that I believe is going to have a big year this year. Tell me about Cole Kmet.
Yeah, I believe my pinned tweet right now is a recent article that I just wrote on Cole Kmet. And I mean, ever since I wrote that, I don't think that I had any influence in this. Maybe it's just coincidental, but he has been shooting up draft charts over the last couple of weeks now. He was getting drafted as like the tight end 18. I just couldn't understand why. I mean, this guy is the second player in NFL history to see 130 targets and fewer than 3 touchdowns in his first 2 seasons. The only other guy to do that was Tony McGee back in the early 90s with the Cincinnati Bengals. He went on to catch 14 touchdowns over the next 3 seasons. I mean, when you're drafting a tight end in fantasy football, you want a guy that's getting targets, and he is getting the targets. Cole Kmet has frankly just been unlucky when it comes to getting into the end zone. And a little of it can be luck, but a lot of it also had to do with Matt Nagy just yanking him off the field once they got in the red zone. He'd sub him in for Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham would get the touchdown, and then Cole Kmet would work in between the 20s again. It was a pretty bizarre kind of tight end timeshare that Matt Nagy was implementing there. So now going into year 3, Cole Kmet is presumed to be the number 2 pass catcher in Chicago. I think his path to 100 targets is almost a guarantee. His path to 125 plus is very realistic as well. So there isn't too much to get excited about on this depth chart besides Cole Kmet. I mean, realistically, we have talked wide receivers, we've talked running backs, and I've kind of been rolling my eyes, not getting too excited about any of them. But Cole Kmet was the number 1 guy in his class coming out of Notre Dame. He's a very talented athlete. He can do a little bit of everything. I mean, he lined up 8th most in the slot last year, but he can still play in line. He can line up out wide. He's extremely versatile. He's a phenomenal blocker as well. He struggles a little bit with his hands at times, but overall, I think that we have only seen the tip of the iceberg for what Cole Kmet can be. It's a notoriously difficult position to transition from college to NFL, and he has done pretty well in his first couple of years, and I think that we see a significant breakout here in year 3.
You had me at Notre Dame. That's all you had to say.
Well, Johnny's also a Chicago area Catholic school kid too, St. Viator.
He is. That's right. I know it. I love it. I love him. He's someone I try to get on all my teams, but there's a lot of these are all local leagues I'm in. I only play in local. Besides the fishbowl, every league I'm in is a local dynasty, in-person dynasty league. So everybody's from the Chicagoland area. So unless there's always one homer that it's Joe Castleman or it's somebody else that's will not give up any Bears players when they have them on their team. They're not giving up Justin Fields, not giving up Darnell Mooney, definitely not giving up Cole Kmet when he's right now the iconic piece of the franchise besides Justin Fields. So I'm not getting him. It is what it is. But I'd love to have him. The Chicago boy from Notre Dame. I had my grandpa had season tickets to Notre Dame my whole life. I went to 5 games a year, all across the board, every year to see Notre Dame. So I would love to have Cole Kmet on my team. It's just not going to happen though. But so we have another tight end to talk about. We're going to go to the Lions here and discuss T.J. Hockenson.
Yeah,
feather in your cap here for for depth charts.
Hey, trying. Hockenson, he's been all right. He hasn't been that, obviously top 10 draft pick, capital in which what the Lions were expecting. He's been banged up a bit, and he just honestly, I cannot make what kind of player he's going to be because we haven't fully seen it. He's only played 16 games once, and that was in 2020. He did make the Pro Bowl, but it wasn't the best season. He had 723 yards and 6 touchdowns. I mean, it's solid, but I'm not sure how he got in the Pro Bowl. He probably got in on some alternative or something like that, or it was just the tight ends. It's not too hard to be a Pro Bowl tight end. So T.J. Hockenson, he's coming into a contract year. He's coming to his 4th year, has that 5th year option if the Lions want to take it. But if he has a big year, it's going to be really interesting because he's going to probably demand that Mark Andrews, maybe not Travis Kelce, but a definite pay raise. And if Hockenson just isn't that next level dude, then I don't know. I think the Lions would probably be better off just letting him walk and putting that money somewhere else, because we've kind of seen what, the Lions have done with tight ends. It's been a lot of bad drafting and kind of making the backups work. We've seen, guys come in like Logan Thomas and have productive years. Dudes like Joseph Fourier go for 4 touchdowns in a game. And then even guys, like Brock Wright last year, who stepped up, a little bit here and there. So TJ Hockenson, I do think he's the best tight end in this division, but it's not really saying a lot. As a fantasy perspective, I think he's right in the middle. He is a guy that does have a little bit higher value, or upside, I should say, just because, he is an elite weapon. But all in all, last year, he was, double teamed and kind of, covered a little bit more heavier because the Lions just did not have any weapons. So it was just man up, cover Hockenson, and you'll win. So that was, I guess, a slight excuse for him for the poor season. But man, if Hockenson doesn't, get around at least 6 touchdowns like he did 2020, then I'm not going to be so sold on him. And also, Pat, the Lions did draft a tight end that went for double-digit touchdowns. He just didn't do it for the Lions. He did it for the Colts, and that was Eric Ebron.
Yeah, that's it. Real fast, I know a couple guys got to get out of here because they had our shows going on. Let me ask you guys one question. You're on the clock in a home fantasy football league, and somebody walks up to you and says, I want your TJ Hockenson, which I had on my team. Would you give away TJ Hockenson in a Dynasty Superflex or a tight end premium 0.75 for Sky Moore, David Bell, Jalen Tolbert in a 23 second?
Yeah,
I would not.
As a Lions fan, I probably would. I kind of like Sky Moore too. I think that 23 second too. I think that's gonna be a solid draft class, depending on what the second is too. If it's bad dynasty roster, then I really like it. But if it's a stud dude, then
yeah,
I'd take that package. Yeah,
I like the package. It was tough to get rid of Hockenson. I still have Gesicki, but it is what it is. So, but hey, listen, you guys. This show was awesome. A couple guys got other. I can't keep you guys on here forever as much as I want to have a 300-minute show. Dave, tell me about yourself, where everybody can find you at, what's going on, just on the way out. I really appreciate you coming on today. Thanks for being a Bears fan. Thanks for being awesome.
Of course, yeah. You can find me on Twitter, real simple, at Dave Kluge, and you can find all of my content, written and video, over at footballguys.com.
Pat?
All right, so I had to do that. You can find my content over at fantasypros.com and find me on Twitter at Fitz_FF.
Somebody else, I can't remember laughing now. I can't. Somebody else say goodbye. But Kane, go ahead, see your way out. I can't even, unless you got some kind of Viking hell or the skull horn to do right now. You can't do that.
No, I don't have the Yaller horn. That is only reserved for the stadiums. No, so you can find me on Twitter at Devi_Kane. You can find all of my work, for the most part, in the Discords. We have a free Discord for the Devi Marketplace, because we just wanted another place where people can learn about Devi and kind of what that means and those sort of things. So we created a free resource. We have over 570 people in there in the Discord, so make sure you check that out, and make sure you check out the podcast as well. And then you can find me on the other podcast of Dynasty Wall Street, which is under the Dynasty Trade Calculator podcast feed.
Great show. I love that show. Adam, tell me about yourself.
You guys can find me on Twitter at EverydayFFB. Do a lot of fantasy football tweets and content on there. And if you're a Lions fan, check out my Lions page, Honolulu Blues _ on Twitter. Post all sorts of good Detroit Lions content. And once again, thank you for having me on, John. This was a blast.
It was awesome, guys. Thanks for making this show awesome. I had a great time. It'll be on Twitter. It's on Apple, on iTunes, I podcast, whatever it's called. You'll figure it out. But guys, thank you so much. I had a blast. This was awesome. Thanks for making the NFC North Divisional debates a great show. Thanks a lot, guys.
Go Lions, baby.